a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will be not judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. Martin Luther King Jr. said these words in his famous I Have a Dream speech. So this is something just interesting and surprising I found out about in my research on biography.com about Martin Luther King Jr. is actually when he was 12 years old, he attempted suicide after the death of his grandmother. And this just stuck out to me because thank goodness he was fine, because who knows what this country would be without him. The I Have a Dream speech was written and was presented by Martin Luther King Jr. It was delivered in Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial. This speech led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it's going to be hard to give this speech by this great man justice, but I'll try. Martin Luther King Jr. was born as Michael King Jr. in the year of 1929. He was son to Michael King Sr. He was a Baptist pastor who adopted the name Martin Luther King Sr. in honor of the German Protestant leader, Martin Luther. So Michael King Jr. followed in his father's footsteps and was honored with the name as well. Martin Luther King Jr. was extremely smart growing up. He skipped both 9th and 11th grades, and he went to college when he was only 15 years old. He earned a degree in sociology from Morehouse College. He attended the seminary. There he met a man named Benjamin E. Mays, who influenced Martin Luther King to use Christianity as a force to cause social change, especially in race inequality. Later, Martin Luther King Jr. enrolled in Boston University for his doctorate, and he was only 25 years old when he received his doctorate. The I Have a Dream speech was delivered in Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial, but a lot led up to it. So during this time, white and blacks were completely segregated, and Martin Luther King Jr. was an active member of the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP. The NAACP was trying to end segregation. And so I'm sure you've heard of the Montgomery bus boycott, which kind of started with Rosa Parks. If you haven't, Rosa Parks was a black woman who refused to give up her seat to a white man. She was arrested for her so-called crime, and Martin Luther King Jr. was elected to lead the bus boycott for colored people. But the boycott was just one of the many attempts to make the country equal. Martin Luther King Jr. Started a campaign in Birmingham, Alabama, where he was actually arrested. And while Martin Luther King Jr. was in jail, he spelled out his theory for nonviolence, which was his motto through everything, was trying to get everything done through nonviolence. After King Jr. was released, he wanted to lead a demonstration at the Capitol asking for a peaceful change. This was called the March on Washington, and about 200,000 people attended that day. It was given on August 28th, 1963. This speech was it was very moving and had a really large effect. It led to the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was a huge milestone for this country. So based on the History Channel's article, King Speaks to March on Washington, said that Martin Luther King Jr. equated the civil rights movement with the highest and noblest ideals of the American tradition, allowing many to see for the first time the importance of urgency of racial equality. This speech was a perfect example of a betterment to a society, just the society of the whole United States. Also, according to the same History Channel article, in just a year after the speech was delivered, the 24th Amendment of the Constitution was ratified. It abolished the poll tax on African American voters, giving them equal right as everyone else to vote. And also within the year, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. This act prohibited racial segregation, like in schools and in like employment. Also, it desegregated all public facilities, so there weren't separate bathrooms or water fountains or buses or anything like that anymore. Martin Luther King Jr. was rewarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. And I want to say it was about, unfortunately, 4 years later, he was assassinated. But if you ask me, anybody who accomplished this much for our country definitely did deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. This speech's closing remarks were free at last, God Almighty, we are free at last. And that is what this speech helped accomplish, equal opportunity for everybody. Thank you.